our job as parents or carers isn't to keep children safe. Our job is to make our children competent.
Welcome to Island Influencers, where we share stories of successful business owners, experienced professionals, entrepreneurs and community leaders based or with influence in the Isle of Man. This podcast is brought to you by Thornton Chartered Financial Planners, because great financial planning has the power to change your life. Now here's your host, Sharon Sutton.
This week I'm thrilled to welcome Chris Gregory, Chief Executive of Isle of Play, a charity dedicated to promoting, providing and advocating for every child on the Isle of Man to fulfil their right to play. Chris was born and raised in Newton-le-Willows, a small town between Wigan, Warrington and St Helens. Growing up in a hard-working, working-class family, he witnessed firsthand the challenges his parents faced in providing for the family. Their perseverance and dedication instilled in Chris a strong work ethic and values that have shaped his career and approach to life. In 2006, after meeting his partner at university, who was from the Isle of Man, Chris decided to move to the island, a pivotal moment that would eventually lead to his incredible work. We chatted about him being attacked by a wallaby, his impressive Blue Peter badge collection, and his time studying architectural glass. But it's through his role as the founder of Isle of Play that Chris has truly found his calling. With support of a dedicated team, he built an organisation that now provides play opportunities for over 1,000 children weekly through innovative programmes. Chris believes deeply in giving children the freedom to play, a simple yet powerful concept that fosters creativity, community and personal growth. His vision for a more child-friendly environment on the Isle of Man continues to drive his efforts to enhance the lives of young people across the island. Please join me in welcoming Chris Gregory in episode 119 of Island Influencers as he shares his wonderful life story and the incredible impact the Isle of Play has had on the community and its children. Enjoy. Well, welcome to the studio, Chris. Chris Gregory from Isle of Play. It's such a pleasure to invite you on to Island Influencers. Thank you so much for agreeing.
Well, thank you very much for the invite.
As I say, thanks so much for coming in. As is usual in these recordings, I've been doing a certain amount of stalking, and you've been very happy to be stalked on LinkedIn and stuff like that. It's always handy when you're connected to somebody, and I know Isle of Play has been in existence for quite some time, and my son actually went along to a couple of the playouts that he did in Marown, I think, a few years ago. Well, he's 17 now, so. But
he won't be embarrassed by that at all.
No, not at all. If it's okay with you, let's hear all about you and where you come from, where you grew up.
Well, Silla.
Oh, I see that.
So I moved to the Isle of Man. I think it was 2006.
Yeah.
Before that, I grew up in Newton-le-Willows, which is just between Wigan and Warrington and St Helens. So that's where my formative years were spent up until going to university, really. Coming from a working class background, Dad was a self-employed joiner, and he worked on a YTS scheme, and my mum held down many different jobs at various times. Seamstress was the main one, and she taught at the local polytechnic, just teaching fabrics and all things, embroidery, etc., as well as lots of other little bits and pieces. And so they worked incredibly hard to provide for us. And then
you got siblings then?
Yeah, my sister Vicky, she's. I love my sister to bits. We're different people, but I think as we've got older, we kind of have more and more in common with each other, even though kind of our I don't know, axioms for life probably are very different. I'm very outdoorsy, and my work is outdoors typically, and she's in charge of HR at Very in the UK. So we're completely different in that respect, but she's one of the few people I really do enjoy sitting down and having a good conversation with. So that's kind of the fundamentals of it, really. Yeah,
it's interesting what you say about your mum working all those part-time jobs. It really difficult for women back then, I guess.
Yeah, well, I don't think I ever really appreciated it. It was one of those conversations with my sister recently. So I'll give you a little bit of background. So their health of both my parents has declined significantly recently, and my dad's now come down with dementia and Alzheimer's.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, so he's now currently residing in a care home, and it was a conversation or an argument that kind of broke out between my parents due to my dad's condition that made me sit back and go, wow, crikey, I forgot about some of the things that kind of arose, the emotions that arose in that, because I'm an adult, and the little conversations and the heated moments that often came around from the stress of my dad holding down a job, my mum holding down several jobs, being a housewife as well, and trying to maintain all that. It was like a moment, a little flash in the pan back to the old days. And it was afterwards that my sister said sort of, what my mum had to do to provide for us that completely didn't appreciate at the time, because my dad was paid something like £8,000 or £10,000 a year, which was nothing. And then my mum had to hold down 4 or 5 other jobs to be able to provide for us.
It's
and so you
different times, but lots of similar. I suppose where we can segue back and forth, but to today, it's still the same sort of challenge with women and children and families. It's not just women.
I think that perhaps the one thing that's changed contemporarily is that there's women, often families are choosing to have their families later, and I think that's a real shame, right? That whilst the challenge presented to women being in the workforce, in the workplaces, is one thing, and certainly that career progression is often halted by families. So there seems to be a precedent to or it seems to be a precedent. You may disagree on this, that women are now preferencing their careers more than family life in the past.
It's a well published statistic, and I'm guilty as charged. I was nearly 41 when I had my boy. So it is well known. But one day we'll get there.
Well, it would be lovely to have the balance right, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't it
and obviously the way that finances go now, it's harder and harder to provide for our families. And the way that we're expected to provide for our families has changed significantly as well.
With all technology, it would be easier, wouldn't it?
But, surely that was the whole point of all the technology we've delivered. We want to get to a point where we can live in a permanent state of leisure, but we're not doing that. And even though the technology is there for us to live in a state of leisure more than ever before, we're still charging through the nose for everything, so no one can afford to do that life. So
no, we're getting far too heavy far too early. So. Let's go back a bit. I am very, very curious to know all about your Blue Peter badges, plural.
Where the heck have you found that out? You've been talking to my mum.
Well, you said you were proud of them.
I certainly was.
And I want to know, because I always wanted one and had no idea. Well, actually, I think we probably all wanted Jim will fix it badges, but I'm pretty sure there was nobody wants any of those anymore. But
I did write to Jim. I did.
So did I.
Yeah. What did you write for?
I cannot possibly remember.
I wanted to...
But if I could, I'm sure I couldn't disclose it. But no, I couldn't. No, was it to make us famous as a folk band or something? I can't remember.
At least that's nice and original, because there was no chance, and thank goodness I didn't get on, because I think I put the wishing that everybody wanted to do, which was, I want to swim with dolphins.
Oh.
Which I can imagine how many hundreds of people wrote in with that same request. I have since swam with dolphins.
Okay.
It's just not as remarkable.
And Jim didn't do it for you?
No, well...
No.
Jim,
let's clarify.
Jim
did not fix it for you. So, go on, Blue Peter badges.
Let's just clarify. I did not win. I was not a first place in any of these. They were all runners-up badges. 7 of them. And...
Wow.
Was it 7? I can't remember. Between me and my sister got more than me, so she might have got 7. I might have got 3 or 4, but she was like 3.5 years older than me. Caveat. Vicky, if you're listening. The only one I really remember was designing a bosque for York Cathedral after the fire there, and we got sent. I trumped her on that occasion, so I got a slightly higher runners-up prize than she did for design in mine. So we got a burnt piece of York Minster as part of the prize and a badge. But the great thing about the Blue Peter badges was that it allowed you free access to various museums and exhibitions around the UK. Yeah.
How fabulous!
Yeah, so we had
and bragging rights.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure.
You didn't get mugged in the playground.
Oh yeah, it wouldn't have been for the reasons of envy, I imagine, either. You nerd, come here.
Dear. Well, that's lovely. So you went through school in Newton.
Yeah.
And then you went to uni. What did you study there?
Well, that was not a particularly interesting journey, really. But so standard straight C student throughout my whole education. Like, really, I never really skill was something I had to do, but it wasn't something that ever really grabbed me, which is ironic because since then, like I find maybe it's because the resources are now available to follow what you're interested in so much more readily and follow the paths you want to, without necessarily having to go get the qualification in it. Straight to C, A-levels, and then went on to study architectural glass, of all things, which is effectively, I don't think I even knew what it was when I signed up to it.
Was it like churches and things?
Yeah, effectively. So it was.
Oh gosh, you got a degree in that?
Yeah, stained glass windows is what I specialised in.
What, like renovation,
medieval replacements,
protection.
Renovation, and then there was also that element of designing your own pieces of art to do with glass. So I remember when the World Trade Center came down, I designed a memorial of. It was a large. I'm using my hands again. This isn't going to be very effective on a podcast.
So I should film these things like everybody does, and put them on YouTube. But
well, it's effective. It was a glass tower with etched around the outside in lead ink. It had 3,000 different words that were collected from the media, because it was everywhere. So New York Times and Al Jazeera newspapers and all sorts of other things, just looking at the wording that had been used, and that was printed around the outside with a light in the middle at the bottom of it, and when it lit up, it projected the words outside of it. So I did it, and it worked far better than I ever thought it was.
Sounds incredible.
Perhaps the one regret is that I never submitted that to the actual thing, because I think it might have. Well, in my opinion, I thought it was good enough to potentially have been a memorial for that.
Certainly sounds like it.
Yeah. So never happened. Not to worry.
Well done.
Yeah, cheers. Yeah. So
next time you come up with one of those, invent it.
I'm quite good.
Share.
I'm all right with ideas. I'm all right with them. And then then did that thing that so many people do when you kind of finish your university degree. Well, what am I going to do? And
what did you decide to do?
I teach, because those that can't teach.
That sounds it's very, very modest. You obviously can. So
went into teaching art at high school.
Yeah.
And then I met my then partner at university, who lived on the Isle of Man. And then one thing led to another. And then
so you moved over with, not as a teacher though, you came over with the children's centre.
Yeah, so, I came over just with my then partner, and then it turned out that during all the school holidays, I'd been working in St Helens for the St Helens Play Association. Without realising it, I was doing play work. It just seemed like a summer job at the time that I was just quite good at. Got on well with kids, and we worked in a place called Par, which had this reputation. I'm sure it's unfounded, but it said like inbreeding capital of Europe. So people in Foxhole there just high-fiving each other. It's not us. It's not us. So I was working in this particularly rough area of St Helens, and start to cut my teeth doing play work before.
Right.
So moving over to the Isle of Man, and John Knight at the Children's Centre gave me the opportunity to do a little holiday play scheme, which then grew and grew. And,
it sure has. I mean, so you said when the information that you kindly sent beforehand, you used to play out a lot, and do you think that having done that's given you a lot of the experience and the ideas for the things that you've then taken forward in Isle of Play?
I mean, it wasn't uncommon for me for children to play.
Without the taunting and the hitting other kids.
Hey, every job has its pros. I don't know. I mean, because every child sort of back then was playing out. It wasn't, so it would be perhaps remiss of me to say that, that was what made me want to do what I do now. It could be unplayed out issues. Maybe a Freudian look at it, and looking at what you've missed out in your childhood. Sure. But
scrumping apples. Yeah.
Well, if only we had apple trees. It would never have been for eating them. It just would have been for throwing at each other, I think. But I think probably my granddad had a large effect on that. He was just a brilliant play worker for me. He was the person that made tree houses with me and rope swings, and we'd go off on adventures and push me on the swings, and a kind of a little man full of comedy and full of odd little expressions and names for things. Horsemen, being called things like Aki Puff, which what the heck's Aki Puff? And if you eat those kind of biscuits, it'll give you Aki Eels. And this kind of, he played with language and gave things funny names and little rhymes. And I think that he undoubtedly, I don't know if my mum's listening to this, she'll probably have a tear in her eye thinking about him, because he was just a wonderful, wonderful man. But by the sounds of it, probably a better granddad than he was father, because I think that's one of those things that grandparents are so magically, fantastically good at. Maybe it's because they give them back at the end of it, or they've got a wealth of experience.
Or they're just busy and working, growing up when you're growing up. I don't know.
Yeah.
Lots of learning.
Yeah.
As well as giving back. Yeah.
And I guess that it was, if I think back to those days when I was playing out, there was never an adult around. They may have been looking through the window, or maybe one of the neighbours would see, or somebody in the neighbourhood would recognise you. But most of the time we'd be off doing our thing. Without having an adult around. I think perhaps the one thing that sort of, I remember there was some sort of awakening at some point during my children's set days where I went, why aren't the children just playing out without, why is it that when we go to a park, 150 kids will rock up and come and play, and then 2 hours will go and we'll pack up and everyone disappears. And I thought that's great that people come to us and these kids have an opportunity, but why aren't the children out in the community doing this themselves?
I know it's a lot of messages, isn't it? And I hope you don't mind me mentioning that excellent comic that you did, which is you sent me a link to, and we put a link in the show notes if that's all right. Can we do that? Or
can we give that? We'll give it a little bit, because we do need to have an official launch at some point. So,
yes, of course.
If that's all right.
This will be while going out. But I mean, the particular one that sort of struck a note. Every kid, when they're growing up, it's like, don't talk to strangers. Mm. And you've put in the caption underneath, because they might help. Yeah. It's like, there is a bit of stranger danger, of course. Mm. And how do you know who's good and who's bad? You don't, people don't walk around with I'm a molester on their T-shirt, do they? But
no, but
much easier if they did. But,
it's interesting you say that one. So everybody that I have shown that comic to has said a different comic. It stood out to them, which is nice.
It's different.
There's different messages to each individual person.
It's how you were brought up, I suppose, and the fact that there's the other one about the single mum who doesn't want to let her kid go anywhere. I was a bit like that. I mean, not a single mum at all, but still, so precious. Yeah, late having a child, and wouldn't dream of letting him even try to cross the road alone, and that, those. It's funny having kids, isn't it?
There's that.
You worry about them until they're here, and then when they're here, you can't stop worrying about them. As they get older, it just,
Yeah, I think there's a message that we've lost. There's a lot of things that we've lost in our community, but with regards to parenting, it seems that we've become a parent that we think that our job is to keep the child safe, and our job as parents or carers isn't to keep children safe. Our job is to make our children competent, and the only way you're going to make someone competent is actually by letting go and giving them some freedom to go and explore.
Oh yeah, it's hard lessons.
But you have to weigh up that.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
So tell us how give us a sense of what it was like to set up Isle of Play, because you weren't at Children's Centre when you were. When you did that,
no, we weren't. So it was a dark time. So obviously the Children's Centre, the Isle of Man Children's Centre, as it once was, that was when I joined. That was maybe 20 years ago now, and John was there, and it had its glory days where I think even in your podcast with John, I think it was maybe 240 staff were there on its books at one point, something like that. And it grew and it grew and it grew, and obviously that wasn't sustainable when they lost the contracts. And then John, he left to go to the UK, and I think I know for a fact that John was planning to do that long before any contracts had gone. So I think some people thought it was him jumping ship, and it certainly was not the case. And I will stand by him 100% with that. But then things changed. New management came in, and everything just got burnt. As far as as far as a lot of the people that were there were concerned, and so it became a shell of what it was.
I think it's rebuilt now with Joff and
it's a different charity. I think probably it would be the best thing for way to look at it, because it's not, the Children's Centre was delivering everything to everywhere
Yeah.
all at once, and now it is a very, very different place. So same name, different charity, I would suggest. So they've had
good way to look at it. Okay.
Yeah, so they've had to build something very, very different.
Yeah.
So we were then put in a position of being made redundant, and so it was like, well, we had a decision to make. Do we believe in, that what we do is as important as we think it is? What are we going to do to establish an organisation that can stand up for children's right to play? Mm-hmm. And so all the redundancy money that I got went straight into setting up Isle of Play.
Oh gosh, well done.
Yeah,
that's brave.
Well, it was brave as it was. It was something that couldn't be done without the trustees, who I was incredibly fortunate enough that during the time when we were going through redundancy, it was, well, if you ever want any help setting up, something else, or let me know. I don't think any of those 6 people that said that to me thought I'd go knocking on the door, a few weeks later going, well, actually. And so Maria Brighton came on board as our chair. Right. Debbie Michelson, who was the ex-chief financial officer at the Children's Centre, she came on board. Joe Thomas came on and helped with all our policies initially and with safeguarding issues. And, out of nowhere, Linda McCauley as well, who was a grandmother and a friend of I was a friend of her daughter's, came on board, and we ended up with the most remarkable bunch of trustees with so much experience across a wealth of fields.
Yes, well-known names.
So they did the brunt of it, without a doubt. That was a nice little face to go on it, but I would not. If someone said to me, "How do you set up a charity?" to this day, I'd be like,
Ask them.
Yeah, I couldn't have done it without them. Yeah, they're remarkable people.
Excellent.
Yeah,
that's wonderful. So what does it look like now from then? Fast forward, what does it look like now? What are you delivering? Right.
Well, back then it was just myself and my colleague Chris, who'd come from the Children's Centre as well. So it was just 2 of us, and the first, I think it was 6 months.
So Chris and Chris. That's not complicated at all.
No,
is it, or confusing? No.
It's what I really like is when so we've now got 4 members of staff, and when a kid goes, they'll come and say, "Where's Chris?" I'll go, "Oh, he's over there." "No, not that one, the other one." And so they just think we're all called Chris. So, well,
Chris, 1, 2, 3, 4.
They're talking about Max, and then we've got another member of staff called Brooke, who's wonderful as well. So we've gone from 2 members of staff to 4 members of staff in 7 years, which is that's 100%.
That's growth.
It's impressive, isn't it? That's growth.
Yeah.
That's growth. So we were delivering Playing Out now, which was recognised as Out to Play back then. Mm-hmm. Which is a mobile play scheme which goes around the island, and we, rope swings, zip lines. We just build stuff with the kids, and they just come and have a great time, and that's always free to attend. And then we had Forest School, which was our other project as well, which is incredibly popular.
Yeah, I've heard that mentioned a few times.
Yeah, so that's a term time project where kids come to a beautiful woodland that we use, and they just come and they play and explore and the environment and themselves in the woods. Yeah,
and you're delivering to quite some numbers now.
Yeah, so it's about 1,000 kids a week.
That's incredible.
And then just before lockdown came along, we just opened up Leicester's Yard to Douglas Council. Believed in what we were doing, and they gave us just under an acre of land in the Hills Ward area, kind of between Annika and Pulrose and Saddlestone. It's a really odd demographic of you've got 2 council houses and this rather posh middle class estate, which is it's a really interesting demographic of children that come to Leicester's Yard, and so that's a project that's open after school, where the kids come down, they can cook, they can have fires, they can run around, they can build.
And you do that 4 people.
4 people, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Must have eyes in the back of your head and everywhere else.
It's just something that comes with time and experience. If you're new to it, and it's incredibly terrifying. But I think what you learn over time is that actually, children are not incompetent.
No, they're not stupid.
I've seen people use hammers, adults use hammers who use them more dangerous than children, because they've got the power to hit a nail and they'll knock it straight through a piece of wood and they'll splinter the wood or whatever, and they don't read the risk as well as kids do. So those are our 3 main projects that we run, which work directly with children, but then we've done other projects as well. We do training, we do consultation work, we've done some playground development stuff, we did play streets where we closed down some streets for children to be able to reclaim the streets as their own and play out on again, which was amazing.
Gosh, what, like just switching the cars off for a bit?
Yeah, well, it's just an agreement with the residents, really, that, listen, children are going to be playing out. Just, you can leave as you want, but we're not letting other cars in. So you needed a road closure order for it, which is a real shame, really, because it shouldn't require them to pay 150 quid or whatever it is to allow children to play out on their streets.
What tends to be, I've heard people who come from the UK have mentioned jealousy, if you like, jealousy of the fact we have 20 miles an hour residential zones. Tell me about how you go about getting have you done that many times when you've closed the street down or got because the order? Is it just too much hassle?
It's a lot of hassle and it's very expensive. And, you're talking 100 and I can't even remember what it is. I was talking to Brescia who'd set it up with us at the time, who was working for Active Travel, and the costs doubled now to close the street down.
Oh, grief.
So, for me, I don't think you should have to close the street down. I think if we're not talking about, because people got so upset about this when we put it on social media, saying we're looking for some streets to come forward. And people thinking, we're going to close down main roads and that children are going to get the wrong idea and they're going to play out, on...
And we don't want them smashing our windows with their footballs.
This constant demonisation of children and childhood and just how stupid children are, this, that and the other and stuff, and that's not the case at all. And it's that's, just before we came live, we were talking about how online people have these opinions, and it's always it's just the extreme opinion.
We were talking about the man in line specifically and wind farms, weren't we?
Oh, good grief, wind farms.
We think wind farms are amazing. We think they're just
more wind farms, put them on everyone's house.
Along with the solar panels.
It doesn't really matter what your opinion is on any subject. It just seems that we're at a point where it's terrible or brilliant, and there's no nuance to discussion.
Polarisation. Well, yes, but then you would find that the negative voices have the loudest, even though they're the fewest.
Yeah.
And that distorts people's view. Their perception is their reality. And the whole idea of this podcast is to give the voice to the otherwise silent majority who are positive. So here we are.
Well, it's so easy to be. We find it we've done really well with Isle of Play. What's one of the biggest benefits about, I guess, being the man at the top in Isle of Play and having this organisation is that when those people come along who are incredibly negative with their opinion, and you realise that you are the voice of a minority, not a majority, and actually what we've got is, the evidence for what we're doing is far stronger and outweighs the benefits. It's a risk-benefit assessment, isn't it? It's going like, okay, the risk of what you're saying is actually very minimal, but the benefits of children being able to do this is far outweigh those risks. And we're in a position where we don't have to, because I have been on the other side of that, where someone complains and all activity ceases to appease this small person, and that's not the case anymore. Our trustees, who are absolutely fantastic, tend to back us to the hilts and say, actually, no. What they're saying
that's what you need. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah, so as an organisation, it's great to be so unified. Yeah.
No, good. Well, if you're getting that support, that's... And you get the opportunity to change people's perception. That's what it is, because their reality is not reality, is it? It's
no. I mean, what's that? Is that quote? Is it? Facts don't care about your feelings.
No, they don't. That's a good one. I was going to ask you for a quote later.
That's not my best one.
So, shall we move on? Just to the I always ask guests, actually, because my day job's a financial planner. So, how for you was money growing up? I mean, you said it was working class background. Do you remember any specific money behaviours that you got from then?
It was. We didn't really want for much because we didn't need much. That was the basic crux of it. I mean, I'm still talking. It's weird, I'm terrible with ages because I just assume we're all the same age typically. So when I think back, you ask me questions like that, and I think back and thinking, I remember when the tops on like glass bottles were 1p, you could reclaim back from giving it back and stuff. Yeah. So I still remember moments like that. But we were in a position financially as a family where, as I've already alluded to, my parents had to work really blimmin' hard to put food on the table. I remember, sorry, Mum, like having dinners of brown rice that it was soggy brown rice and meat that sticks between my teeth, as I remember it being. It was just with peas thrown in for a bit of goodness, and that was like a staple of our diet. And it was like, what's for dinner tonight? Rice. And it was like, oh Lord. Now I'm of a position where I can afford a rice cooker, and I realise that actually brown rice is quite nice when it's not soggy. Sorry, Mum. So it was things like that. The Christmas presents were often reused items, and there was a history of them breaking on Christmas Day, which was always quite hard as a child. But I remember I was talking to my partner, because actually a group of boys went pop round to her house. 3 boys popped round to her house yesterday, saying, "Can I clean your car? It's £3 each that's £9 for these lads to clean your car." She said, "Well, actually, I'm off out, so I can't do it." And I remember doing that as a kid, myself and my friend Andrew Hilton, his grandparents lived on the same street, and so we used to play out quite often. And we came with this brilliant idea: let's go clean the neighbours' cars. We can get some money. Now, this was the 80s, and there weren't like 4 cars per household. There was like 1 car per house, but what a brilliant idea. So we thought we'd go and clean everyone's car. We were getting like 10p, 20p for cleaning a car, but we had no idea what we were going to do with that money. We knew that money was like this important thing, because I think everybody was always talking about, everyone worked. Why are people working? And they're working to obtain this little pieces of copper, or nickel, whatever it's made of. So we're going, well, but let's get it. So we get like 40p together. I have no idea what happened to that 40p. We never used it because there were never any shops nearby. So, but we knew that it was important, that we should be working towards having that. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. And so, how is that transposed to today? Have you got any more idea now?
Well, I think if you talk to our trustees, they'll probably tell you. I mean, that is frugal the right word? Is that the word meaning I'm tight? So
fair enough.
Every penny that I'm not within my personal life, I'd like to think I'm quite generous, but because the nature of the charity, and perhaps the nature of the way that I grew up and how I played, is that actually we try not to spend money on unnecessary things. So the resources that we use,
it's always easier to spend money. But it's not ever in its nature to be enough. No, it's interesting.
So we use resources like old pallets, old wood, reclaimed bits of stuff, old nails from men's sheds that they don't use. And so everything that we tend to use, the majority of, if you ask Debbie, she'd say we spend all our money on twine. We just buy lots of string to tie things together.
You do lots with string.
You do so much with string. Honestly, string and rope. I cannot encourage you enough to get handy with a piece of string.
Use knots.
Use a knot, learn how to some good knots, yeah.
So what does, if I asked you to define rich or wealthy, what would you say?
Oh, crikey. It's hard not to be trite, isn't it, with something like this? Wealth is my health. I don't know.
It actually is.
Well, I think that's it. It's a multivariable, it's a complex thing, being healthy is important to me. But I say that in a position where I'm financially, I'm not living in squalor. I'm by no means the richest person. And I can afford to eat out occasionally, but I don't need much more than a roof over my head. I bought my own place. I'm paying my mortgage off slowly. It's nothing glam. So when you've got the fundamentals in place, a roof over your head, you can put food on the table. It's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
I was just going to say, it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, isn't it?
Which, I could talk about Maslow for a while, sure and the massive holes in the Maslow approach. But when you have got those fundamentals, then what is important to you then? And so it's friendship. It's responsibility is probably the key word for me. In terms of that, it's about being responsible. And being in a position to be responsible is a good way of measuring wealth if you can do it and you can do it well.
That's a really good definition now. Thanks. That's good. And of all the things you've done so far, what's given you the most fulfillment?
Crikey. It's Well, obviously, setting up Isle of Play, so
yeah, of course,
it's a tremendous achievement.
Yeah, it
isn't
is absolutely.
So,
but the specific, any projects that give you particular heartwarming. I mean, the forest school aspect is that.
Well, I'd probably say it's interesting. Crikey, it's that notion of that self implies other in the same way that black implies white, and I think that actually to genuinely be proud of something, I would probably put it beyond myself and say. So right now, I could give you an example of a young man that we work with, and his story is actually within that comic book that we've briefly mentioned, and he hasn't been to school at high school for 4 years, and he was, by his own admission, suffering from depression, and just staying at home and not doing an awful lot.
Heartbreaking. And
since January, he's been working with us, and he's been coming in every day, and. Genuine. I mean, it's ridiculous. I'm sitting here with some goosebumps trying to think about it. He's also annoying as hell. If he is listening, you're really annoying. But he told us that he's not going to be coming back in September because he's going back to school full time.
Oh, fantastic!
And he knows he wants to work. He wants his English. He wants his maths GCSE because he wants to come. He wants to come and work with us, and he knows that to get the qualification.
Yeah,
which is brilliant and also ridiculous because. There are some brilliant people out there without the right qualifications to get onto a course who are so well suited to working with children, and he is brilliant with working with children younger than him. And I feel it's just a shame that he's having to tick boxes for a piece of paper that aren't going to matter to him once he's got it. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, incredibly proud of him. So proud of him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good story. That's a great story. You should be, guys, you should be so proud of yourselves doing that. That's brilliant. So, number one tip, just to move on to something dry. What's the number one tip for your any aspiring business owner, community leader, organisational, leader like you are? What's your number one key tip for anybody else looking to go into a role like that?
I think you can only do it your own way, really, can't you? But adaptability. I don't know. I guess that's perhaps one of my own strengths is the ability to be adaptable. I remember listening to a lecture a long time ago, and you can adapt it. He talks about how within a deck of cards, you've got a hierarchy from ace being at the bottom. In some games, all the way up to the king, which sits at the top. So you've got your sort of royal hierarchy there, and then you've got your joker, who is the ace in the hole. Really, it can be anything. So at any time, it can move throughout the deck and replace any card. And I think that be adaptable, be the joker in that situation where you can work at the very bottom, be on the floor if it's something like that, and also remain humble enough when you're at the top. And so, that would be my one thing. Be adaptable.
That's excellent. That's really good. How would you? I mentioned you mentioned when you walked in here, you'd walked out. I mean, is that the sort of thing you do to relax, or is something else?
Yeah. It is. Well, yesterday myself and partner, we were on annual leave, and so we walked from Kurt Michael to Laxey, which was lovely, over the hills. Got attacked by a wallaby. Marvellous. I don't think it could see very well. So the dog found it.
Right.
And I was like, whoa. So I started chasing it. Oh, get back here. So the dog comes back, and then this wallaby's bouncing all over this hill, disappearing in the distance, and it bounced back. And honestly, it didn't have a clue where it was going. It came back on the road and hopping towards us. Alex is like, ah! It comes towards us. It literally got about a foot away from us before it saw the dog again, went, ooh, and then went off again. And it was, but that was a bit of drama. But I think perhaps that's the best way. I think perhaps of thinking about what I like to do to relax. Sorry, just dropped my pen.
Not deliberately get attacked by wallabies.
No. But just to be out and there's a variety of things, and enjoy whatever's at your disposal, really.
Yeah, and what about the best things about living in the Isle of Man other than putting yourself in a situation where you can get attacked by wallabies?
Just the opposite. I can't think of a place anywhere where the level of opportunity is what it is, like it is on the Isle of Man. There is no way on God's green earth that I could have been Newton-le-Willows, Warrington, Wigan, and set up Isle of Play, and it been as successful, as well thought of and well supported as it could have been on the Isle of Man. And I think that's something that we don't celebrate enough. Entrepreneurship, I guess, for want of a better word, is that if you've got an idea and there's no better place to have a go at doing it, because if you get it right and the community will support you, and we know there's a little bakery opening in Peel, and there's hundreds of people liking the idea of this bakery and stuff. Brilliant. Yeah, what a fantastic thing. We need more little independence. I think that's something that I've seen change since I moved in 2006. How there's now more little independence opening of high quality, bakehouses and a prime example.
You're completely right. And we've just come back from France, and you see that very much the Isle of Man is a series of small villages, isn't it? And you see in France the village mentality, the high street mentality is alive and well there.
Yeah. So, there's no Greggs, is there? It's all there'll be the independent bakeries, I imagine.
There's the odd. I think I saw one McDonald's and a Starbucks, but they're few and far between.
Yeah, I remember when I went to Prague. When I was at university, there was one McDonald's that we saw. And that was the only thing I can't imagine. That was 2001.
So, have we become more European, not British?
Well, yes. I think sort of the Douglas Murrays of the world would argue that case. I think it's a shame that we are losing touch of our heritage and Britishness a little bit. It's becoming a little diluted. That's a conversation for another time, I think.
It sure is.
That'll upset a lot of people potentially, doesn't it?
So, if you were, the island has its own problems. What do you think the main ones are, and what are you in a position to see opportunities and solutions for?
Main problems. Well, I'd approach it from. I think there's a poverty of opportunity and experience with childhood. There's this massive focus to bring over. However many, is it 10,000 people? Is it by whatever deadline it is? That's it's almost like we seem to have an engineering approach to it. We're saying, I remember watching. Have you heard of Rory Sutherland?
I have.
I love him. He's fantastic. And
he calls it as it is, doesn't he?
He's brilliant. And he talks about what's that rail thing called? HS2, isn't it? That's the one I was thinking of. Yeah. Yes. And he talks about that, and he says, we've given us a problem to some engineers, and we want to create a train line from A to B. What we're going to do, we'll make it as fast as we can. Well, imagine giving that same problem to Disney. What would Disney do? Well, they'd look at your existing rail line and go, well, let's put a ball pit on board and we'll give free internet access and this, that and the other. And all of a sudden, people would want to take the slower train to wherever it was, because they'd enjoy the experience. And then I think he says that the HS2, I looked at this before I came out because I thought this might go up, but it's been quoted, the recent quote for it is £56.6 billion is what they projected the cost on that was. Now, I think Rory Sutherland's approach was something along the lines of, well, forget that, let's just employ a load of male and female supermodels, give people who'd give out free caviar and champagne aboard your regular trains, and let's see what happens to the numbers using those then, So the creative approach to it, and I think in terms of the Isle of Man, we want all these people to come. Well, what are we doing to improve it? And what are we doing to improve it at the very bottom? And that's where we need to start. At the very bottom of this hierarchy, if we go back to our deck of cards, is we've got the child. Now, we've got this opportunity to create this island into the most wonderful place. We keep saying it's the best place on earth, blah, 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 blah. Well, let's make it the best place. Let's just say it. Let's just rest in our laurels and say, well, it's incredibly safe, and use ambiguous language like safe, whatever the heck that even means. Let's make it a place where you create it for children, and by doing so, you create a community for everybody else, and you create an opportunity. Because, and this extends into your tourism, who I remember years ago having a conversation and saying, oh, well, why do you market it at walkers? Well, that's what our research tells us are the most people that come here are walkers. Well, do you not want to bring people who aren't walkers here? Which seems to be the obvious thing to me. And what do you do? Well, you say, well, actually, you know what? Well, let's make this the best place in the world for children to grow up and or even just start by celebrating the great things and opportunities that are here that are already available for children, and make families want to come here. And then you want to bring 10,000 people to move over here. well, actually, those 10,000 people probably want to have children, or they may have children. And it's going to be a heck of a lot more of a better proposition for them if they're going to come over here and go, actually, you know what, our education system is brilliant. And I'm sorry to say it's not. Our communities have opportunities for children to play. We don't, but the opportunities are there, but the permissions aren't there, and we're not investing in those things because we don't consider it to be a priority. So for me, if there was one thing that I could change, it would be let's change how we're looking at these problems. Stop putting this engineering, looking at the end goal as being the final goal, and actually look at the space in between.
You talk a lot of common sense, don't you?
I don't know. He just spews out things, just waffle half the time.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. Well, there you go. If you're listening, you know where to find him.
And if you're not, it doesn't really matter.
So what have you got planned next, Chris? Can we talk about your comic?
Let's talk about comic. So this has been something I've wanted to do for years. Because we can talk about how many children Isle of Play work with. We can say, well, we work with about 1,000 children every week, and that's what we do. But that's just some numbers. So how is it that we get the message out about some of the stories that we see? And these are, and I'm talking genuinely day-to-day stories. So we sat down and we sort of collected the stories and thought, well, what's happened today? What's happened in the last week and stuff? And so we wrote them down over a little bit of time, and then we've kind of gone through and I've gone, right, well, that one. And we thought, well, what is the best way to get these stories out there? Well, for a children's play charity, it seems obvious that actually, a comic is really on brand and on point for us.
Well, it depends on the age that you are aiming at. I mean, we've never actually said what age Isle of Play is aimed at.
Oh, yes, we should do so. Kind of birth, because we do get children coming from birth with parents, obviously. But anybody who's a child, so we do have children who are we have some we can't get rid of. We've got some who are 17 now who are still turning up at Leicester's Yard.
And then you've got your 14-year-old who's going back to do his GCSEs, or 15-year-old.
Yeah. And so that's it. It depends on the project.
Big range, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't think you'd necessarily go the playing out. Playing out's changed an awful lot due to registrations and inspections and limitations that were put on us. That we were told that parents have to stay now if they're under 8, etc.
Yeah.
So that means that we've gone from having maybe more 11, 12, 13-year-olds to having younger children.
Fair enough. Well, it's not babysitting, is it?
No, exactly. So we've got that, but then Leicester's Yard attracts some slightly older ones as well. All ages of children, I would say.
Yeah. No, very good.
Yeah. What were we saying before that? I can't remember what it was.
We were saying about the comic.
Oh, the comic, that was it. Sorry. So we got this comic, yeah. So we got the stories, and then we sourced an artist to illustrate these comics. So we went to Adam Berry, who's done a phenomenal job.
It is. It's a really great looking piece of design.
Just different styles for every one.
It is. It's very good.
And so that's when if we talk about who is this comic aimed at, part of the idea of doing it in the different styles, this is one of Adam's ideas, was actually, well, each one of those styles will appeal to
someone,
a different generation. And so the hope was that we'll disperse them within waiting rooms around the Isle of Man. When the time comes, it'll be completely free. And then, what do you want to do? Do you want to pick up this 4-year-old copy of Gardener's Weekly? Or do you want to, what's that? Let's have a look at this. And so hopefully anyone will thumb through it.
Yeah. But the format it's at, I mean, I saw that the Isle of Man government have agreed to ban mobile phones for schools.
Yeah.
Is that right? That's just...
Yeah.
You just imagine if it. So there'll be some real clever kids out there who'll have 2 phones, won't there? And all sorts of.
Oh, there'll be ways around it for sure. Yeah.
The real naughty ones, but the resourceful ones. But it's not quite. It needs more mobilisation, in my humble opinion. The
comic itself.
Yeah.
Well, we've got them printed out, so that's. I think
maybe save your cost.
Yeah, well, that we will do when it comes out. We will just release it as a link that anyone can look at, which will be great. So hopefully we'll use it to boost funding bids as well. Because often we find when you put in funding bids, it's typically talking numbers again, without getting the crux of what we actually do.
You'll soon discover how tight you actually are when it comes to printing costs, let me tell you.
Oh, yes, yeah. Well, we've had 800 printed out. Well, my living room is currently stacked up with 800 of them. Yeah, and we're talking, it's about £1 a comic, I think it works out at. So
that's not too bad.
Well, we were fortunate. We were given a grant by the Scheinberg family.
That's so great. What a fabulous family.
Yeah, indeed. Very generous.
Yeah, okay. So, on to the last few questions.
Go for it.
Go on. What's your favourite book or any inspirational read you recommend to people?
Yeah, for sure. Well, so many books. But there was one book. So, obviously, having listened to it, I'm familiar with some of the questions you've asked and stuff, and so it did make me think beforehand. Maybe I could go with like either something incredibly silly or something incredibly profound. The Gulag Archipelago. It's quite a read. Alexander Solzhenitsyn. But no, it wasn't. But it is a very profound read. It's called, oh crikey, Questions. Where are we? Did I write this down somewhere? I'm sure I did. Yeah, there we go. Notes from the End of Everything. And I haven't read this one I've read it a few times. I haven't read it for probably a year now.
It's always a good book when you can go back and reread it.
Brilliant, genuinely outstanding. And I carried a few of these. I bought a few of these books. It's a very short read, and I would give them to people occasionally when somebody who I thought would benefit from it.
Yes.
And it talks about, so it journals the last few months of a man who's got a brain tumour. Sounds incredibly bleak, this, and. He's a writer, but the book itself is based on a series of essays that he wrote on his computer, and he talks about his regrets, his feelings of imposterism, self-doubt, and worth. And it's incredibly bleak, but it's full of hope. In a way that I will never be able to communicate without you ever actually picking it up and reading it.
Yeah, okay. Send us a title. We'll stick it in the show notes.
Yeah. It's genuinely one of the most uplifting books that you could possibly imagine. Yeah.
Okay, I think it'll be my pick for a book club or two soon. So. And what about? Have you got any? What do you watch or listen to podcasts? What's your chosen entertainment? If you.
I'm a bit of a sucker for YouTube, I think, because you just get those. I'll do anything watching. Something incredibly silly, but I'm a sucker for a good debate or a podcast. Christopher Hitchens lectures from days gone by, and just the way that he. These people communicate them so well. Good podcast, Cosmic Skeptic, Alex O'Connor.
Yeah.
He's just like a child to look at, but he's just the most eloquent, and he's sort of person going like he just seems like the sort of person that could just win any argument.
Oh right. Do you like monologue sort of podcast things? I prefer more of a debate, more of a conversation, like we're having. I suppose,
well, that's Well, I think that's what I like about sort of. Alex O'Connor is that he's often talking to various other people. So I really enjoy that. And there's other ones like The Weekly Planet, which is just a silly comic book kind of podcast as well.
Yeah.
It's pretty varied. Yeah.
No, it sounds like it. Oh, you needed variety sometimes. Spice of life. And what's your favourite quote?
Alan Watts. The real secret of life. This is the real secret of life, to be completely engaged in the here and now, and instead of realise it's not work, it's play.
Yeah.
That's
good. That's very good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think aside from that, and just letting our listeners know where they can go to learn to find all about you, which is Isle of Play website. We'll put all the links in the show notes. You send them over to us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming along today. It's I could talk for hours to you. I mean, I could talk to hours for all of our guests, really. But it's fascinating, and I look forward to hearing more about holes in Maslow's approach another time. But
I can tell you plenty of them.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Chris. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks for listening this far. I hope you found this episode to be valuable. If so, I'd like to ask you for a small favour. would you please go to Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star review, because that's one of the best ways for others to find the series. And please send a link to the podcast to 3 friends or colleagues who know they'll find it helpful. That way we can spread the word about how great a place the Isle of Man is to live and work, and help spread some positivity. Thanks again for tuning in and being part of our great community. I'll see you next time. Island Influencers is a fortnightly podcast. Make sure you don't miss the next episode by clicking the follow button on your podcast platform. A big thanks to the producer Catherine Watts from Social Cues and editor Martin Bamford at Bear Content, and thank you for listening.